The river was running high, and he heard her before he saw her. A shape in the current, too large to be an animal, moving wrong. He did not think about it. The bank was dark and the water was cold, and he had a rope on his belt because he always did out here. He went in. The next morning her father came. The cold took his breath the moment he was under. He found footing on the stones below, lost it, found it again, and pushed toward her. She was face down, green-grey skin, the enormous spread of her shoulders. Her body rode the current like something that had stopped fighting and not yet started sinking. He grabbed her arm. It was wider than he expected. He got his feet under him and pulled. She did not move. He worked his way 2 steps upstream. He found a root above the waterline, wrapped his arm through it, braced his back against the bank, and pulled again. This time she moved. Not much. He kept pulling. His shoulders burned, and he kept pulling. It took a long time. He did not count how long. He got her to the bank. He got her face out of the water. She was not moving on her own, but she was breathing, short and shallow. Breathing. He looked at her. He had never been this close to an orc before. She was enormous. Not just tall, though, she was that too. He could not have said how tall. Lying there half in the mud, the water still running off her and darkening the earth around her. Built on a different scale than anything he had moved before. The mud gave under her weight. He guessed 2.5 meters, maybe more. He could not have carried her either way. He tried once, anyway. He got her halfway to upright before his legs gave. He stopped and worked her arms over his shoulders instead and started moving. Dragging was the honest word for it. It was the ugliest thing he had done in a long time. His land was not far. He knew this bank. He did not call for anyone. He got her inside. He put her near the fire, the only space wide enough. He covered her with the biggest blanket he owned, which was not big enough, and added wood to the fire and sat down in the chair across the room. Her chest rose, fell, rose again. The color came back slowly. He sat and tended the fire when it needed it, and watched her breathe and did not think about much. In particular, the wind came under the door the way it always did in autumn. The fire cracked and settled. Her breathing was even now not shallow anymore. That was something. At some point in the night her hand opened. He had seen something in her fist when he was dragging her up from the bank. She had held it even then, fingers clamped shut. He had not touched it. Now it lay in her open palm, dark and small. He crossed the room quietly and picked it up. A stone, or carved from one, smooth. A shape worked into the surface that he could not read in the low light. He did not try long. He set it on the table. He went back to the chair. The night was quiet. No horses on the road. No sound from outside at all. Whoever her people were, they did not know where she was yet. Someone would be wondering. He could not do anything about that tonight. He watched the fire. He did not sleep. He was up before the light. This was not new. He had been waking in the dark for long enough that the hour before sunrise felt ordinary, felt like something a person could move around in without stumbling. He dressed in the cold and went to check on her first. She had not moved much, but something had shifted. Her arm was in a different place, her shoulder turned toward the fire. She was breathing evenly. The color in her face was better than it had been in the night. Not good exactly. Better. He stood there long enough to be sure, then went out. The animals needed tending. He did that first. He fed the goats in the far pen, which were nervous in the dark, but not unusual about it. The old mare in the lean-to was bothered by the smell of something she did not recognize. and stood at the far end of the stall with her ears flat. He talked to her the way he always did, not words exactly, just sound, until she came forward and let him fill her bucket. The chickens were indifferent. The chickens were always indifferent. He checked the fence after. The east post was still leaning from where the ground had softened in early autumn, and he had not gotten to it. He looked at it the way he looked at the other things he had not gotten to, which was without particular feeling. The barn wall on the south side had been sagging since late summer. The field beyond the barn was half what it had been 2 years ago, maybe less than half. His wife had died 3 years back. Not sudden and not drawn out either. That middle space where you could see it coming and still not be ready when it arrived. The land was theirs, and then it was his, but his was the wrong word for it. His name was on the deed. He had kept working because the work was there, and because work did not ask you how you were doing and did not require you to have an answer. He had not mended much in those 3 years beyond what the animals needed and what kept the roof from coming in. He was not someone who had stopped caring. He was someone who had lost track of what caring was for. He went back inside. She had shifted again. Her right hand was lying on the floor where the object had been the night before, the fingers loosely open, searching without knowing it. She did not know the object was on the table. He thought she might wake soon. The way she was lying now, there was more intention in it than there had been at midnight. He made food. He filled one bowl, and then a second, and set the second near her, within reach, when she woke. He poured water into a cup and left it beside the bowl. He did not wake her to tell her it was there. He picked up the object from the table. He had not moved it since the night before. He turned it over once in his hands. It was heavier than he expected, or lighter. He could not decide which. That was a strange thing not to be able to decide. He set it back where it had been. He took his own bowl to the window and ate standing. The light outside was grey. The road was empty. He could see the start of the ridge to the north and the tree line beyond the field, both dark against the pale sky. He was most of the way through his food when he heard horses. More than one. He put the bowl down. He went to the door. He did not reach for anything on the way. He opened it. 3 riders on the road. Dane stood in the doorway and watched them come. The sun was barely up, the light was flat, and the road still soft from the cold. The riders moved at a walk. The one at the front was an orc. Dane had known that from a distance. The size was visible before anything else. He was enormous, even seated, older by the way he held himself, but not frail. The same broad-boned structure as the woman inside, the same breadth at the shoulder. He rode without thinking about it. 2 riders behind him, both human, neither armed in the way that trouble comes armed. The front rider's eyes were on the house before he had fully stopped. Dane could see from where he stood what the man was looking for. The windows. Not Dane's face. Not his hands. Dane stepped down from the porch. The orc pulled up 10 feet short. He looked at Dane. Then he said, in the flat way of someone too tired to be careful, "My daughter." "Inside," Dane said. "Is she hurt?" "She was. She's better now." "Was she harmed? Beyond the river?" "No." The orc held his gaze for a moment. Then he swung down from the horse and handed the reins to the man behind him without looking. Dane brought him inside. Sova was awake. She had pulled herself upright against the wall by the fire. Dane had heard the effort of it from outside. She was pale. Her shoulders were not fully up, but her eyes were open. Keth stopped inside the threshold. He looked at her for a long time. He did not move. Dane stepped back to give them room and watched the man stand there looking at his daughter the way a person looks at something they were certain they had lost. Sova did not look away. Whatever was in her face, it was not relief exactly. It was older than relief. Her father crouched down in front of her. He put his hand on her head once and held it there. Then he stood. He crossed to where Dane was. "What you did," Keth said. "You don't need to pay it," Dane said. "That is not how this works." He said it without heat. There was weight in it, but not argument. "My daughter will work your land until what is owed is settled. This is not a trade. A life is not paid in coin. What is owed is balance." Dane looked at the floor for a moment, then at Sova. She was watching from across the room. She had heard all of it. He did not look at her when he answered. He kept his eyes on Keth. "I have more work than I can manage alone," he said. "I won't pretend otherwise." Keth looked at him steadily. "No," he said. "That is good sense." A silence. Keth turned to look at Sova. Something moved between them that Dane did not have a name for. Keth turned back. "All right," Dane said. He was aware, when he said it, that Sova had not spoken to him. She had not protested. She had not agreed out loud. She was looking at her father, and her father looked back, and Dane let it stand. Keth went to her one more time. He crouched down and spoke to her quietly, in a language Dane did not know. A few words. She answered in one. He put his hand on her shoulder, then stood. He said to Dane, "She works hard. You will not regret this." Then he went outside and mounted, and they rode. Sova did not move from where she sat. She watched the road through the open door until the sound of the horses had been gone for some time. Then she looked at the room, at the fire, at the table with 2 bowls still on it, then at Dane. The riders were gone. The road was empty. Dane stood in the doorway a moment longer, then turned back inside. Sova was on her feet. He had not seen her standing. Not fully, not in light. She was against the far wall, with one hand on the beam above her head. Not for balance, he thought. The ceiling put her there. He looked at her the way he looked at anything he needed to take the measure of, which was plainly and without embarrassment. 2.5 meters at least. The beam she was touching was not decoration. The crown of her head cleared it by almost nothing. She was watching him look. She did not say anything. He nodded once. She nodded back. He went past her to get his coat, and she turned slightly to let him through the room, adjusted. That was the thing he noticed. When she moved, the proportions shifted around her. Not wrong, not monstrous, just different than what a room felt like. With one person in it, she followed him outside without being asked. She walked the fence line while he checked the east post. He went his direction. She went hers along the south wall of the barn. He watched her from the corner of his eye. She stopped at the sagging wall and looked at it for a long moment. She looked at the field. She looked at the far post, which was his problem, and not yet hers. She did not comment on any of it. But she looked at things the way a person looks when they are counting. He showed her the well. She found the woodpile on her own. The sleeping space was the problem. He brought her to the back corner of the house, where there was a pallet and a shelf, and just enough room for one person to stand upright. She stood in the doorway and looked in. She was wider than the opening by 1/2 foot. She would have to sleep bent, or on the floor, or sideways. He did not apologize. He stood there looking at the space, then at her, doing the arithmetic. Then he started moving things. He shifted the pallet to the long wall. He moved the shelf to the opposite side. He pulled a board from against the barn wall that was the right length and set it as an extension, then found rope to lash it level. He worked without explanation. He did not ask her to wait, and did not look at her, to see how she was receiving what he was doing. It took about 20 minutes. When he was done, the space was still narrow, but it was long enough. He stood back and looked at it. She came in and looked at it. She pressed down on the extension with one hand. It held. Taya. "I'll take the fence on the east side," she said. "I'll feed you," he said, "and the roof's solid." She looked up at the ceiling, which was not quite tall enough for her, and then back at him. She did not say anything to that. "All right," he said. That evening he ate at the table, and she sat near the door with her bowl. He did not propose a different arrangement. She did not either. It was not uncomfortable, exactly. It was two people in a room who did not know each other yet and were not pretending otherwise. He banked the fire before bed. He said good night without looking up. She said nothing. He heard her settle in the adjusted space a while later. The rope held. She did not move much once she was down. The house was not quiet the way it had been. It was a different kind of quiet. He lay in the dark and listened to it for a long time. He had not slept in a house that was not empty since his wife died. On the second day he woke to an empty house. He dressed in the cold and went to the door. Sova was already at the east fence, the broken post out of the ground beside her. The hole opened up. She had found the right tools from the barn without asking him where they were. He stood in the doorway and watched for a moment. She worked the way the land required, efficiently and without wasted motion. She had braced the post in the hole already and was packing earth around the base with her hands, compressing it in even layers. She did not look up. The post was already straight. He said nothing. He went inside and started the fire. On the third day, he made something hot before he went out and brought 2 cups. She was at the south wall of the barn, which had sagged past shimming and needed new timber at the base. He set 1 cup on the fence rail nearest to where she was working. Then he walked to the field and did not look back. She did not drink it while he could see her. He knew this because when he came back past that way an hour later, the cup had been set back on the rail where he left it, empty. On the 4th day, the mare refused her. Sova was crossing the yard toward the woodpile, and the mare shied back in the lean-to, hooves shifting, ears flat. Sova stopped. She went completely still. She did not reach toward the animal, did not make a sound, did not try to explain herself to it. She just stopped and waited, one arm at her side. Dane watched from where he was at the field edge. He kept still too. It took a while. The mare went sideways, then stood. She turned her nose toward the yard and stretched it out. Then she took 2 steps from the lean-to and nosed Sova's hand. Dane went back to what he was doing. A little later, Sova came up to the field edge where he was working. She stood a moment beside him. "The horse," she said. "She's not good with new things," Dane said. "She came around. She usually does." Neither of them said anything else. It was not quite a joke. But it was close to something, and they both knew it, and they both left it where it was. That evening the stone was still on the table where it had been since the first night, and Sova saw it. She had not been in the main room at night since the first evening. She was passing through on her way to her space, and she stopped. She looked at the stone on the table, the way you look at something that should not be where it is. "What is that?" she said. "I don't know," Dane said. "It was yours. You were holding it when I pulled you out. I took it from your hand and set it here." She came to the table. She looked at the stone for a long time without touching it. It was small and dark, smooth on one side. The other side had been worked a shape carved into it that he had not been able to read in any light he had tried. She turned it with one finger, slowly, the way you turn something when you are reading it with touch rather than sight. She did not pick it up. She pulled her hand back. "It's yours," he said. "You can take it." She looked at it a moment longer, then she looked at him. Then she went to her space and did not say anything else about it. The stone stayed on the table. It was not a conversation they planned. About a week in, maybe 9 days. The nights had gotten cold enough that the fire was not optional, and they had both come inside before dark, for no reason except the cold. She had her space in the back, but the fire was in the main room, and she came to sit near it without asking. He was already at the table. He did not comment on her being there. They sat for a while without speaking. They had learned each other's quiet, or at least they had stopped reacting to it. At some point, Dane said, "My wife died 3 years ago." He did not know why he said it. It was not a question, and it was not an invitation. It was just something that came out in the particular silence of a cold evening. The land was hers as much as mine, he said. More, maybe. She knew things about it. I've been figuring out since. He looked at the fire. I stopped thinking it was going to get easier. After that, it got easier. He did not say anything else. He was not asking her to respond. She did not respond for a while. When she did not offer sympathy. A river crossing. 7 years back, different river than yours. Dane did not say anything. He was the one who knew the crossings, she said. I was the one who followed him after. I didn't know them anymore. I had to learn them one at a time. She looked at her hands. I go back to the place where it happened, not to do anything, just to go. I do it when the season comes around. That was what you were doing, he said, not a question. Yes. When you fell in? Yes. He did not ask what it had been like to fall in, or what she had been thinking when she went under. He understood that there were things that happened around grief that did not need to be explained to a person who had their own. They sat. The fire did not need tending. He tended it anyway. He added a piece of wood that was not necessary and adjusted the one that was already there, and when he sat back down, the room was a little brighter, and neither of them mentioned it. After a while, he reached across the table and picked up the stone. I don't know what this is, he said, but I think it belongs near you more than it belongs on my table. He set it in front of her. Then she picked it up. She held it in both hands, not turning it, just holding it the way you hold something that has weight you are not measuring. She set it back down, not toward him, not to herself. She set it in the middle of the table between them. He looked at it there. She did not explain the placement. He did not ask. It was not trust. It was not even comfort. It was the end of performing like strangers. The small, plain decision to stop pretending that what had happened in the last week had not happened, that they had not sat in the same room for 9 nights, that she had not drunk the cup he left on the rail, that he had not built her a longer place to sleep. They had not agreed to any of that. They had just done it. And now the stone sat between them on the table, and the fire burned, and neither of them moved to end the evening. 3 weeks passed. The east fence was done, the barn wall was straight again, new timber set in where the rot had been. 2 rows of the north field had been turned, more than Dane had managed alone in all of the previous spring. They had not discussed who did what. They had simply found a way. She took the heavy things, the structural work, the posts, the timber, the loads that required weight behind them. He took the close work, the seeds and soil, the tools, the food. When he needed a post held while he drove the pin, she held it. When she needed a joint squared, he squared it. There was no negotiation. There was just the work, and they both knew how to read it. On a morning in the 3rd week, the work asked for both of them at once. The north side of the barn roof had a section of crossbeam that had shifted in the autumn rains and needed to be pressed back into its seat. Dane had looked at it twice and decided it was a two-person job. He said as much. She nodded. She braced the beam from below, both arms raised and flat against the timber. Holding the full weight of it, he worked from the ladder beside her, driving a wedge and then the pin. It was close work. His shoulder was 6 inches from her arm. Her hands were at the level of his chest. They called adjustments to each other, in short, plain words. Left, hold, there. And they did it without looking at each other more than the job required. It took about 15 minutes. When the pin was seated and he came down from the ladder, they were standing very close. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then she stepped back, and he picked up the tools, and that was all. 3 days after that, she stopped near the far edge of the field while they were working and crouched down to look at something in the soil. "There's a root here," she said, "from something that grew here before. You can work around it or pull it, but if you leave it, the soil stays loose in this section and you won't get full yield." He came and looked at where she was pointing. He did not know what plant had left the root. "We had the same in the foothills where I grew up," she said. "We pulled them. It takes a few hours, but the ground is better after." "We'll pull them," he said. She nodded and stood, and they went back to work. That was the longest thing she had said to him at one time, and she said it the way she said everything else, which was without particular weight. The cold gap in the back corner was something he had noticed 2 nights ago. The wind came from the east after dark, and there was a crack in the wallboard that let it through. He knew she felt it, because he had felt it himself, standing in the doorway of her space. He cut a piece of board to size and fitted it, then packed the edge with folded sacking to seal it. He did this while she was outside working, and he did not mention it when she came in. She came back in before dark. She went to her space. She ran her hand along the new board once, slowly, checking the fit. She did not say anything. He was at the table and did not look up. He could not say, later, exactly what was different, not comfort. That was too soft a word for whatever it was. Something harder to name than comfort. Something that had to do with the way the house sounded in the evenings now, and the way the field looked different from the window than it had 3 weeks ago, and the fact that he had stopped counting the days. He did not plan it. He had made enough food for 2 since the first week, but they had always eaten separately. Him at the table, her near the door. That evening, he set 2 portions at the table at the same time, at the same angle facing each other. He put the bowl and cup at her usual place near the door, stood there a moment looking at it, then picked them up and moved them to the table instead. She came in from outside and stopped when she saw it. She looked at the table. She looked at him. He said nothing. She sat. The chair was not built for her. It was an ordinary chair, and she was not an ordinary amount of person. The way she arranged herself into it involved a certain compression that he noticed and did not remark on. She was also too tall for the table's angle to work naturally, and she held her bowl differently than a person holds a bowl when the table is the right height. He sat down across from her, and they began to eat. It was awkward for about 30 seconds. Then she picked up the cup. It fit in her hand the way a thimble fits in a hand. She looked at it, she set it back down, picked up the whole pot instead, and drank from the lip of it directly. She did this without expression, the way you do something when you have decided not to be embarrassed about it. Dane looked at his cup. He looked at the pot. He looked at his cup again. He said nothing, but something moved in his face that was not a smile, and was close to one, and she saw it, and looked at the pot, and something moved in her face too. She put the pot back and picked up her bowl. "Among my people," she said, not looking at him. "You don't take the first bite at a shared table until the other person has eaten first." "Why?" "It means you trust the food." She ate. Then he looked at his own bowl and realized he had not taken a bite yet either. "You waited," he said. "I don't know you well enough yet to be certain," she said. "But I waited." He was not sure if that was a joke. He was not sure she knew either. He ate for a while in quiet, and it was not the same kind of quiet as before. "Stadia." Then he said, "What did your father say to you when he left?" "The part I didn't understand." "He said to watch the land," she said. "He said, good land tells you what it needs. If you're patient enough to listen." She set her bowl down. "He meant it about the land, but he meant it about the person on it too." Dane did not say anything to that. He thought about it later, though. When the meal was done, she got up and cleared the table before he could. He was already half out of the chair. He sat back down. She did the bowls quickly and set them by the basin and went to her space without making anything of it. He sat at the table a while longer. He noticed, sitting there, that he had not thought about the empty chair in some time. It arrived as a quiet thought, not a heavy one. The chair was the same chair, the table was the same table. The room was not the same room. He noticed this and sat with it for a moment, and then let it be. The rider came at late morning, alone. Dane saw him from the field. He stayed where he was, one hand on the fence rail, and watched the man come down the road, single horse, no one behind him. He was dressed plainly, but with an official's precision. The kind of plain that is intended, not accidental. He had a leather case at his side. He rode at a walk, and when he saw Dane standing in the field, he aimed for the gate and stopped there. Dane went to meet him. The man introduced himself as a land register officer and kept his tone even throughout. He had received a formal objection, he said, a complaint registered by a neighboring landowner asserting that the presence of an Orc resident at this property was in conflict with the settlement code for this district. Specifically, the provision concerning non-citizen habitation on registered land within certain boundaries. He did not present this as his opinion. He presented it as a fact he had been asked to convey. Dane listened. When the man was done, he said, "She came here after I pulled her out of the river 6 weeks ago. Her father came the next morning and made an arrangement with me. She works the land. I provide room and food." "Do you have documentation of the arrangement?" "A witness would be her father." "I don't have a written agreement." The officer noted something. The complaint references Section 4 of the Settlement Code, which requires registered documentation for non-citizen labor arrangements exceeding 30 days. I wasn't aware of that section. Most people aren't. He said it without judgment. He raised his eyes from his notes. Sova was standing at the edge of the yard. She had come out while they were talking. She had not been called. She stood at full height, both arms at her sides, looking at the officer, the way she looked at the fence line when she was deciding what it needed. She did not speak. The officer had to look up at her. Dane had grown used to that adjustment the moment it required. He watched the officer make it. The officer looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at Dane, then back at her. He wrote something down. The pencil on paper was very loud in the quiet. He said he would need to look into the matter further and would return with the relevant information about the requirements. He put his notes away, tipped his head to Dane, and rode back the way he had come. They watched him go. He had not been threatening. That was the thing about it. He had been procedural. Procedural was harder to argue with than threatening. Then Dane turned and went back to the field, and Sova went back to the barn wall, and neither of them said anything about it. The rest of the day was quieter, not because they hadn't spoken much anyway, but the quality of the quiet was different. more deliberate. They both understood what the visit had set in motion, and neither of them named it. That evening, Dane got out the land deed and the documents he had. What there were of them, which was not much. He read through them at the table without explaining to Sova what he was looking for. She sat near the fire. She did not ask. But he could feel that she was watching, and he could feel that she had already drawn the same conclusions he was drawing, and that she was waiting to see what he would do about it. He kept reading. 2 days after the official, more horses came. Dane counted 3 riders before they fully cleared the bend. The one at the front was not the kind of man who arrived second. He rode with the settled certainty of someone who has already decided how this ends. Not aggressive, exactly, but without the particular quality of openness that a person carries when they are still willing to be surprised. He was about Dane's age, better dressed, with a document case across his saddle. He stopped at the gate. He did not wait to be met. "My name is Harlan," he said. "I own the 2 parcels east of yours. I have a registered complaint and a formal notice." He opened the case and held out a folded document. He kept his eyes on Dane. He did not look toward the yard where Sova was working. "Your land borders mine at the creek line. Since the Orcs' work on your north field began, the drainage has changed. My lower field is backing up. I've had standing water for 2 weeks. I have documentation and a surveyor's note. The applicable settlement code gives me standing to demand both remediation and resolution of the underlying cause." He said all of this in a single, even delivery, the way a person recites something they have rehearsed to sound unrehearsed. "The underlying cause," Dane said. "The non-citizen labor arrangement, which, as I understand it, is also undocumented. The official who visited 2 days ago can confirm both points." Dane did not take the document yet. He looked at the man for a moment. Then Sova stepped forward from the yard. She did not come forward aggressively. She simply stopped, holding herself back. She moved to stand at the edge of the porch, which put her at Dane's shoulder, and she looked at Harlan. He looked at her. He did not flinch. It was not a man who flinched. But something shifted in his expression. A small recalibration, the kind a man makes when the facts in front of him turn out to be different from the facts he was expecting. He took her in the way you take in a problem that has changed its dimensions. He filed her away. He looked back at Dane. Dane held out his hand for the document. Harlan gave it to him. He read it. Not quickly. He went through it the way he had gone through the deed 2 nights before. Section by section, not skipping. He read the surveyor's note. He read the complaint language. Harlan waited. His 2 men waited. Nobody said anything. "The surveyor's note confirms drainage change," Dane said. "It doesn't establish cause. Your lower field has been backing up since last winter. I know, because the same water crosses my south fence. The field work on my north side wouldn't reach your creek line. The slope doesn't run that direction." Harlan said nothing. "The code section you're citing applies to permanent non-citizen residents, not to labor arrangements. That's the same section." The official raised. Section 4. The distinction is in subsection 2. Dane folded the document. He held it out. "I'd like to keep a copy." "Keep it," Harlan said. He was still even, still precise. "We'll be back." He turned his horse. His men turned with him. He did not look at Sova as he went. Dane set the document on the table when they came inside. Sova picked it up before he had fully sat down. She read through it. He had expected her to take a while with it. She did not. She read it the way she surveyed a fence line, steadily, and without stopping. She set it down. "The complaint was filed 4 days ago," she said. before the official visited. Dane looked at her. "He wasn't responding to the official's report," she said. "He filed this before the official came. He already knew about me before that visit." Dane picked up the document and found the filing date. She was right. A week after Harlan's visit, they came down the road before the sun was fully up. Dane was already outside when he heard them. He counted from the field. Harlan at the front, the town official from the week before riding 2 lengths back, and 5 men behind them. He counted once and counted again, 7 in total. The road had not held that many at once, in longer than he could remember. He did not go inside. He turned and saw that Keth was already standing at the edge of the property near the north gate. He had come before sunrise with 2 riders. He was simply there when Dane stepped out, standing at the gate post the way a man stands somewhere he belongs. Not inside the fence, not at Dane's back. Beside him. His 2 riders were behind him, still on horseback. Dane said, "Sova did," Keth said. He looked at the approaching horses. "We came." Dane went to the porch. He stood there. Sova came out of the house and moved to stand at his shoulder, 1 step to the side. She had chosen the place. He had not gestured or made room. She placed herself there as a fact, and stayed. Keth moved from the gate to the other side, 3 of them facing the road. Harlan pulled up 10 yards short. He said nothing for a moment. Then he reached into the document case and held out a folded paper. "Writ of expulsion under Settlement Ordinance 12, he said. "The non-citizen resident of this property is ordered to vacate within 7 days. The land register officer here is co-signatory." He paused. "This is not a complaint. This is an order. No one moved," Dane said. "The complaint you used to obtain this writ was filed 4 days before the official visited my property, which means it was filed before he had any knowledge of the arrangement here, which means the writ was obtained on the basis of information the filing officer did not personally verify. He said it once. He did not say it again. Harlan did not respond. No one moved. The horses shifted. One of Harlan's men adjusted his reins, and the sound was very loud in the quiet, and then it was quiet again. Harlan looked at Dane. He looked at Sova. He looked at Keth and the 2 riders behind him. He counted. The look that moved across his face was not fear, not quite. It was something closer to the expression of a man who has walked up to a wall, where he expected to find an open field. The wall had not appeared. It had simply always been there. He had not accounted for it. He looked at the official. The official said nothing. Harlan looked at Dane again. He looked at the document in his hand. Something was being weighed. Something was being set aside. He put the document back in the case. "We'll see about that," he said. He turned his horse. His men turned with him. The official went last. None of them looked back. They watched the road until it was empty. Keth stayed. He stood with Dane for a moment without speaking. Then he said, "You held your ground." "It helped to have company," Dane said. Keth looked at him. "It helps to deserve it too," he said. He turned to Sova. He spoke to her in their language. Not many words. 3 or 4. She answered him in the same. He put his hand on her shoulder once the same as the first time. Then he and his riders mounted and went down the road in the direction Harlan had gone. Sova watched until they turned the bend. Dane stood beside her and said nothing. That was also something. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces. A week of mud, then 3 days of hard freeze, then mud again, then one morning when the ground held firm and the light stayed longer than it had any right to. The fence was whole. Every post was set, every rail true, the east side and the north side, and the section near the gate where he had found the rot last autumn. The field had rows, and the rows had green in them, and the green was the kind that had been put there by hands that knew what they were doing. Dane walked the property most evenings now. He had done this when it was just his property. He still did it. It just took longer to walk. They ate together every evening, not because they had decided to, not because he had said one day, "We should share meals," or because she had suggested it. It was just what the table was for now. He put 2 portions down. She came in from outside. She sat. They ate. That was the whole of it. She had carved something into the beam above her sleeping space. He noticed it about 6 weeks after the standoff, which was the same week the last of the freeze broke for good. Small shapes, 5 or 6 of them, running along the grain of the wood. He did not ask what they meant. She had not explained. But they were there, and they had not been there before, and they changed the room the way a thing does when it moves from borrowed into kept. The river stone was on the shelf above the window. He was not sure exactly when she had moved it. He had looked up one afternoon, and it was there instead of on the table. He had left it where it was. It made sense on the shelf. It was just where it lived now. One evening in late spring, they were both outside after the day's work was done. The field was full of green. The fence held the property in a clean line on all 4 sides. The light was going low and long. She said, "The fence on the west side will need work before winter." "I know," he said. A pause. "We'll do it in the fall," he said. Neither of them said anything else. The word had been in that sentence, not announced. Just there, she had heard it, he had said it. Neither of them named it. That was enough. He did not push it further. She did not either. They stood there a while as the light went, and then she went inside and he followed. Later, when the evening had gone dark, they were both outside again. She had come out for something, and he had come out for no particular reason. They stood near the porch. The field was between them and the fence. The road beyond the fence was quiet. Then something moved on it. A rider, distant, moving at a walk, already past the curve of the tree line before either of them had fully made him out. Neither of them spoke. They watched the road until the rider was gone and the road was empty. Again they went inside. But the world beyond the fence had not finished moving. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much. Orc AI Story.